Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Today, I'm excited to introduce to all of you David Beck. He is an executive-level systems engineering professional specializing in transportation safety, sustainability, electrification, autonomous mobility, technical innovation, artificial intelligence, space, air, land, sea, and national security systems engineering research. He's the founder of Hub Venture Partners, LLP, focused on growing startups across various disciplines. He's also the chief technical scientist and officer of Autonomous Directive Ventures, specializing in human-centric connectivity areas in mobility. He's an he's an autonomous expert with extensive experience in driving and working in mobility startups. He holds multiple degrees and certificates in various fields, including industrial engineering, traffic crash reconstruction, airport construction, cross-cultural project management, flight vehicle aerodynamics, innovation and commercialization, project management, business corporate communication, and holds an MBA in marketing. He served in the leadership and advisory roles in organizations such as United States Space Force, Outline It, Just Her Rideshare, One Health Lessons, and that's just naming a few. Audience, I think you know why I've invited David to this conversation. David, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Ms. Levy.
So I did the fast summary of all of the things that you have touched and that you're influencing in your work, but will you take the audience on the journey? Who are you? Tell us your story and what brought you to what you're doing today.
I think the most pivotal part of my experience is when I was a kid, I looked up and I saw stars and I asked, what's the question? What is those and what they do? Finally, remember a comment about this is where it's always been stars. They shine upon us. We wish upon them. And my whole thought pattern was I need to find a way to get there. So I watched, PBS and all those TV shows, and then I started watching Star Trek and the old Star Trek in black and white at my grandma's house. And I said, I want to be an astronaut. And I was like 4 or 5 years old. I couldn't be an astronaut because of my height and I can't see really well in one of my eyes. And then restrictions otherwise, I decided to be an engineer. So I was born an engineer. I went to school, became an engineer, and worked my way into the space industry about 27 years later. But along the way, I gained a lot of experience in technology innovation and working in cars and transportation, working on submarines and Navy, working in aircraft as being a senior engineer in the aeronautics industry, as well as working on team building and networking and those tangible things that you have that bring up project management and resource configuration and things like that. The words you hear in all these news broadcasts about technology innovation that comes to space, it can't be done alone, it has to be done with a group of people. So that's one of the valuable things I find that I like to bring people into the fold who are experts in their areas to make things happen, because you're only as good as the people around you. You bring the most intelligent people into the discussion, you have the best favorable results.
Absolutely, right? It's all about the team, right? My greatest desire personally is to never, ever be the smartest person in any given room. I want to learn from everybody else around me.
Absolutely.
So, David, talk to me a little bit about your role today and what you're doing specifically with let's go with Space Force.
So my position here at Space Force, I am the branch chief for capability analysis, formerly business intelligence, which incorporates both of those tangible assets. Capability is the opportunity of the resources, the programmatic standpoint, the influence from industry, the culture of spatial exploration, all gathered. And analysis part is analyzing those companies, those technologies, those pervasives, those tangible assets of technology innovation and transfer technology to benefit national security, but also benefit the culture of providing opportunities to build out infrastructure in space. And that's what we do in our office here in Space Systems Integration here at the Los Angeles Air Force Base, formerly Los Angeles Air Force Base, but now Los Angeles Space Force Base in El Segundo, California.
That is absolutely fabulous. So from, a child who was influenced by Star Trek and all of those other shows coming forward, right? We as a human culture are so fascinated with the idea of space and what's out there. Being able to actually tangibly play in that sector today must, one, feed, right, the engineering side of your brain, but you're also a marketer. And so how do those parts of your brain play together to drive innovation in what you're doing in your role?
So my creative mindset, I'm very analytical focused. So I look at opportunity when people talk about a problem. I look at resolutions. So it kind of helps me market my skill set of bringing people into the discussion. So I talk to a lot of startups, a lot of small business owners, entrepreneurs. They give me a call, we chat via LinkedIn, especially, inboxing me on LinkedIn about ideas or discussions about something they see that can be brought into a product or commercialized in some so to speak. What I say is, okay, for being a government, a government representative, I say, well, how about we do a dual approach, something that you can help commercialize what you're doing and something that can help benefit the national security and the nation as a whole. So that marketing perspective, it helps them understand how their product or service can be brought to fruition. But I think the basic marketing approach came from, as a kid, I looked at, okay, I can create something, I can sell it, I can make it, feasible to consumers to purchase from an engineering standpoint. I mean, make sure that it's sustainable, and that sustainability is part of my marketing approach with building any kind of technology innovation.
That's absolutely fabulous. With other guests that we've had recently, space has been sort of a theme that has popped up because, well, it's really in the forefront again for the first time in a couple of decades with as much passion and drive as we probably saw. It was before my lifetime with the original NASA programs, but with what's happening today, the ability to take and commercialize what we learn in space and bring things back to the terrestrial world, right? These innovations go hand in hand. And so you're very naturally playing with the government space exploration side of it, but tying it into commercializing and bringing real products and or services to us at home. That's absolutely fabulous. Is there one aspect of what you're working on that you can take us through, sort of what the story is, what the project is, and maybe what some of the obstacles are that you're facing?
So I think most of part of it is the evolution of building a small business or startups to exist. I think a lot of people understand that the big corporations like the Lockheeds, the Boeings, they've been around for quite some time, but they are not the ones that push the ecosystem for, economics in this country or just globally for say. So the products and services that we use here in Space Force, part of my job is, growing that project would be the biggest project of all, is growing that industrial base, right? So I'm in charge of industrial based efforts. In doing so, there are companies out there with ideas. So I take the idea generation from a entrepreneur and say, hey, how can we fit that to what we're doing here in the technology innovations for space overall, not just for us, but for DoD, for the nation, right? Because we all know that innovations came out of government a long time ago that actually I'm holding my hand right now, my phone. The process that we use to call people back and forth, communication tools, came out of research, right? So part of that is mentoring. The big part of my day in terms of the project management of innovation and industrial base is mentoring small businesses and vice versa, learning about what the small businesses can do for the ecosystem and for the ecosystem specifically for space-based opportunities. And then taking that and finding ways in which these companies can innovate and educate and broaden the perspective of space-based industry going forward, which would benefit all of us because space-based industry is no different than going to Cancun. That's a resort. But in the future, there would be a revolving satellite system around the globe where you can go up there and look at the Earth from space and do the same thing you're doing on Earth. It's just a transition from Earth to lunar. And that's where things end up going. So it's not really a hard per se in terms of visionary, but putting it on paper, building that, it's expensive. And it's like gasoline prices. When there's a combustible amount of gas, the price is low. When there is a small amount of gasoline, the price goes up. Space now is small because there are only a few companies who actually done the due diligence to have things in space. But as you build out the ecosystem and from a project management standpoint, that cost will be reduced. And that where small businesses, will thrive, and opportunities for consumers like ourselves to be on one of those ships and take a ride of a lifetime.
Absolutely. And so one of the other things that you're tying together for people who've been paying attention over the last couple of episodes, right? You mentioned Lockheed and Boeing, right? The big Fortune 500 companies, which are less than 5% of the businesses that exist. Yep, they control a lot of the money, but they are, few in number. Small businesses are what move the economy forward. And in this partnership, right, space itself provides opportunities for small businesses to work with the federal government. And my listeners have learned recently that the federal government actually really wants to do business with small businesses and has programs designed to do this. Space becomes a really big opportunity for those smaller businesses to make that connection to doing business with the federal government, because we are designing, not we, I'm taking credit for your work. You are designing and working with people who are designing the future and the
Yes.
ability to have that resort in the sky.
Yes, it does. I mean, not only the sky, but cross-function. We work with universities, institutions, research think tanks to bring out innovation to not only benefit space and astronomy and things of that nature above our heads, but also benefit new jobs, new innovation, new applications, new technologies that would bring youthfulness child at age of 4, as I were at one time, into a whole ecosystem of employment that never was thought of never existed 20 or 30 years prior.
Absolutely. And what I always love, and I'm totally a bit of a sci-fi geek in my own right, but looking back to those old shows, the original Star Treks, right, the 1960s era, and if we were to actually pull forward the ideas and the seeds that they planted inside of the minds of children who grew up to be doctors and scientists who brought technology to play, that may or may not have ever been imagined if we hadn't had science fiction. It's absolutely fascinating to me.
Yes, science fiction is science fact, because science is something it's constantly evolving. As we sit on this podcast and we're talking and back and forth, there are thousands of different ideas, hundreds of patents being produced in a few minutes of this discussion. This shows you how innovation cycle never stops for not one person, not one idea. It's evolving ecosystem. So exciting. If you look at it, patents for drugs to protect people from getting cancer, opportunities to protect pedestrians from getting injured on the street, opportunities to increase our own age so we can live longer and healthier lives. It is such a wonderful time to be in science. And it's something that I really take very personal to heart, to give all I can to make sure that I do something that's innovative and sustainable for humankind.
And in this, right, the opportunities we're in the midst of the artificial intelligence emergence. And that means lots of different things to different people. But from my perspective, what it means is it's freeing up the ability for humans to do bigger, better, more interesting things. And how we leverage that in terms of growing into a full presence in space is that will be critical and help drive us forward. Do you, from your own personal science fiction childhood dreams, do you honestly see maybe in our lifetimes that we really have a presence in space that is for the average person to be able to get there?
I do think so, because it's not only science fiction or theory. The fact that your DNA, everyone who exists on this planet, there's a piece of your DNA that's not available on this planet in any life form. I mean, we are hodgepodge, just a bunch of different genetic backgrounds and flavors that make up who we are. And guess what? That's what the universe is. So we are part of the universe. I think that's probably why some kids like me hunger for looking up in the sky and want to be out there, because we feel that part of us is calling out to that part of ourselves to look up and beyond. And also the fact that commercialization of transportation is part of all the government verdicts in terms of how we do things in the private sector and the public sector, is making transportation sustainable, reasonably priced, and optimistic so the public can get around. And space is no different. As we build our infrastructure for space, for government, for commercial use, for satellite purposes, for all the other purposes going on, there will be process for people to get on flights to fly up. There are not $80 million a seat, right? Like Blue Origin or SpaceX. There would be cost narrative that's costing maybe $10,000, $8,000 to get up in space, which is reasonable from my average person to save up money. You know, you and your wife or husband or whatever can get out in space and fly up for an anniversary of 20 years and see the Earth for the first time in your whole life. Be a magnificent experience, right? We can put themes around that and opportunities to show how important for us to move up into the stars and outward and things like that. And not just be some scientific TV show or cartoon made for movie, but something that actually exists in humankind.
And, the idea, and I know that we're making up numbers here, but that $10,000 amount, right, for that kind of once in a lifetime experience, I think there are lots of people who plan and save and do those and trips. That dollar amount is achievable for many or for some. And that the thought that is something we could do, in our lifetime is awe-inspiring to me, because it, for me, still feels way out there, even though we are seeing, I'm going to be flippant for a moment, right, the crazy billionaires playing. But that's a tipping point, and it's the start of making it more accessible to everybody else. David, you have such a diverse perspective with your background, your education, and all of the places that you've played. When you're looking to the future, what are the things that you might see on the horizon that are going to be fascinatingly disruptive or innovative that we can look forward to?
I think from a technology standpoint, you're going to see the new NASA contract that came out, nuclear engines. You're going to see us going to unknown destinations in space quicker, more efficiently, and a quicker time in terms of the effect it has on humans. You're going to see some of the research and technology that's been done on the International Space Station trickling down to more commercial use in terms of drugs or life changes in terms of how we live on Earth, how we sustain our economic environment, but also how we treat the planet, so that we can have more longevity amongst ourselves and have opportunities that we can branch out and do different types of trades and crafts and engineering and science, not just engineering and science, the technicians, the people behind and make things happen, opportunities to engage in those areas too, and more, diverse, let's say more diversified, different new types of skill sets in EV sector, in the hydrogen sector, to build out crafts or build out transportation vehicles that would incorporate more of hydrogen or electric. Yes, and people complain about the benefits or non-benefits to society, but it's still more efficiency is needed so that we can use those other resources to do other things and then hopefully put our planet back together again. So there's no global warming and no issues, where we can actually live out our lives in more free-based opportunity and economy.
That is a fabulous look to the future. And I'm sorry, I didn't turn the ringer off on my phone. What a horrible human being I am. With that wonderful look towards the future and the opportunities, right? You tied together through all of that tie back to the creativity that comes from childhood and finding ways to think into the future, into space and what's possible, and bring back the benefits to us on the planet in real life applications. Thank you for taking us through that whole experience.
You're welcome.
One of the things I like to do with my guests at the end is to ask a question that is very much about who you are as a person, because you've already shared with us who you are as a thinker and a doer. My final question for you today is, what is your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Well, I love to play golf, and I like to go play golf, maybe Top Golf, or I have this game I play called Golf Clash, just to relate. I love golf because it helps me focus, because I'm an analytical thinker. I like to look at numbers, but I also have to look at how I can be more competitive with other people and don't know, just to play a game of golf and just to sit and have a good time and have a drink and talk and sports and stuff like that. I like to go walk on the beach. I'm close to the beach here in California. That's why I came back here from Washington, D.C. And it's one of the best experiences to have, to walk on the beach, to get out and smell fresh, cool air. It's a great experience that I hope that most people get a chance to do in their lifetime.
It is absolutely fabulous. David, thank you so much for the conversation today. The touch points of how we can use the things we learn in space, bring them back down to the planet and actually make an impact and challenge the way we do things here at home to innovate and drive a better future for everybody. For those of you in the audience today, you know the rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Every single week, one lucky listener that posts a review on iTunes will win the grand prize drawing, a $15,000 private VIP day with Lisa Levy. And be sure to head over to disruptandinnovate.com and get your free copy of Lisa's gift. And join us on our next episode.